Alan said, "I feel like we ought to give some thought to the future." "Oh?" Jane said, keeping her voice light and neutral. She had no idea what he might say next, but she felt apprehensive. They were watching television in the family room at Jane's house. Her parents had gone to bed, but there was always the possibility that they might descend the stairs, or else one of Jane's brothers might come home. Her brothers regarded Alan with a certain amount of mirth, and it was best not to give them any opportunities. So that this evening, like others, was spent unbuttoning and buttoning, melding themselves together and then pulling apart, their moist skins making a smacking noise. The future? Yeah? She ventured. Alan said, "I've been trying to find a term that would convey the idea of God, but without the religious context. God as a comprehensive, unifying principle. God as unquestioned rightness and authority, except secular. Not God. It isn't as easy as you'd think." "What are you talking about?" Jane had started out impressed by Alan's intelligence. Then she got used to it, and now it often annoyed her. "What does that have to do with the future? Future in general, or me and you future?" "Me and you. See, people say, in the eyes of God, meaning an alternative to state-sanctioned, as in, married in the eyes of God." He gave Jane a cunning sideways look. "What?" "But if we don't want to go all religious, we can just say we're married in the eyes of the universe. I think it's a reasonable alternative." "Married? Who said we're married?" It didn't seem like the kind of thing you had to argue about with somebody. "That's crazy. Anyway, you didn't even ask me." "I guess I just figured," Alan began. "I mean, we've been hanging out for more than a year." "Hanging out," Jane repeated. She supposed that was what you called it. She and Alan didn't do a lot of boyfriend-girlfriend activities, besides the kissing stuff. No date things like football games or parties. They studied together, they watched movies on video, and sometimes they accompanied Alan's grandparents to performances of the symphony, where the grandparents were patrons. These did not feel like dates either, even though Jane dressed up and Alan arrived at her front door with the corsage his grandmother had made him buy. They climbed into the vast back seat of the grandparents' Lincoln, and Jane answered the grandparents' questions about what she had been studying in school, while Alan, inspired to friskiness, attempted to work his hand or foot across the chilly expanse of upholstered seat that separated them and burrow undetected between her knees. "I'm not getting married or pretend married. What a stupid idea. Why do you even want to?" "So everything would be all settled." Alan was sulky now. Clearly he had expected her to go along with it. He gave her a peevish look. Maybe he was not as smart as everybody thought. "You want to, do it, but you don't have to bother with talking me into it or anything." "You're a very conventional person, you know that?" As always, when somebody told her she was one thing or another thing, Jane kept silent. She never thought of herself as conventional, or whatever other label was placed on her, but other people seemed to view her so much more clearly than she did herself. Alan grabbed her hand and shoved it into his crotch. Jane yelped and pulled away. She thought she had felt his penis squirming around beneath his clothes, ready to break loose, attack. "You're just afraid nobody else is ever going to come along," Jane said, meaning it to be scornful and sarcastic, but then she realized she was right. And for a long time after Alan, nobody else came along for her. She got excellent grades and was admitted to the state university as a general education major in the humanities. She didn't have clear vocational plans. She figured she could find some way to support herself if she had to. Meanwhile, she signed up for classes in art history and political science and American literature, meant to enrich her being with knowledge, much as a layer of fertilizer might be spread over a field. Her roommate was going through sorority rush and spent a lot of time on the phone with other rushees, comparing their prospects. There were good houses and less good ones. Which house had a reputation for being sluts? Which had the best parties, or partnered with the hottest fraternities? Which one was for joyless, dreary types going for high grade point averages, like Jane over there on her side of the room, writing a paper on Walt Whitman? Most of the time, she and the roommate politely ignored each other, but on this night, the roommate said, "Do you want to go to a mixer? There's a guy somebody knows who needs a date. You wouldn't have to dress up or anything. Just don't wear your glasses." She could have said no.